The Vedic Civilization. The coming of the Aryans marks the beginning of a new civilization in northwest India. It was quite different from the earlier Indus Valley civilization. There are different views on the origin of the Aryans. The commonly accepted view is that they came from Central Asia, perhaps in search of better pastures for their cattle. Historians are of the opinion that Aryans came across the Hindu Kush mountains between 1750 BC and 1500 BC. They entered India through the Khyber Pass and thus came to be known as Indo-Aryans. Aryans in the Sapta Sindhu and Gangetic Valley. The region where the Aryans first settled in India was called Sapta Sindhu, the land of seven rivers. It was also called Brahmavarta. The period of their stay, ranging from 1500 BC to 1000 BC, is known as the early Vedic period, as most of the information about the period comes from the Vedas. It is also believed that the Vedas were composed at that time. The Aryans arrived in Indo-Gangetic plains between 1000 and 600 BC. This period is also known as Later Vedic period. This region came to be known as Aryavarta. Here they faced stiff resistance from the inhabitants who they termed as Dasyus. The Aryans had horses and better weapons which helped them to fight against Dasyus. They arrived in batches as they were divided into many tribes. Each tribe wanted to dominate the other. So, it resulted in not only wars between Aryans and the Dasyus but also inter-tribal wars. Vedas and Vedic literature. The Vedic literature. The earliest written records of any Indian civilization are the Vedas. They are the literary records of the Aryans and a priceless treasure of knowledge. The Vedic literature is broadly divided into two categories: Shruti, to be heard, and Smriti, to be memorized. The four Vedas come under Shruti text. Vedas were probably authored during 1800 and 600 BC. The Vedas. The Vedas are very important religious and social texts of the Aryans. They are said to be divine revelations. The term Vedas is derived from the Sanskrit word Vid, which means to know. These Vedas contain hymns, explanation of rituals, ways of meditation, and melodies. These are divided into various sections. They were passed on from one generation to another orally without anything being omitted. They are four in number and are the main source of knowledge about the Vedic civilization. They are Rigveda, Samaveda, Yajurveda, and Atharvaveda. Rigveda. It deals with the knowledge of the hymns of praise for recitation. Rigveda is the oldest and largest Veda with almost 1028 hymns in praise of gods and goddesses and recited during rituals and sacrifices. Surya, Varuna, Indra, and even Agni are some of the gods spoken about and praised. Saraswati is the divine river in Rigveda. Samaveda. It deals with the knowledge of the melodies for chanting. This is a collection of melodies of 1549 stanzas which were meant to be sung by special priests called Udgatris. Yajurveda. It deals with the knowledge of the sacrificial formulas for public worship. It consists of prose mantras to be recited by priests while performing rituals like yajna. It comprises 1875 verses. Atharva Veda. It deals with the knowledge of the magic formulas. The hymns contained in this Veda deal with karma, action, upasana, invocation, and gyan, knowledge. It has about 760 hymns. The Vedas also carry religious explanation of the hymns and practices. Brahmanas. These are important social and religious explanations of rituals of the four Vedas and indicate the value of sacrifices. These are like commentaries on some of the hymns of Vedas and help us to realize their importance. These are called Brahmanas. Stories and legends are also included in the Brahmanas. The concluding part of the Brahmanas is called Aranyakas. They emphasize morality and meditation and were meant mainly for the students and hermits living in the forests. Importance of the Vedas. The Vedas are the most authentic source of information about the Vedic period. Along with the information about religious practices, the Vedas also tell us about the social and economic life. The literary excellence reached its peak at that time. The Aryan educational system, as well as their music and melodies, are known to us through Vedas. The Upanishads. The word Upanishad means to sit down near someone and denotes a student sitting near his guru to learn. These are also called Vedanta, end of the Vedas, because they signify the last phase of the Vedic period and reveal the final aim of the Vedas. They are the main source of Indian philosophy. There are a total of 108 Upanishads. Various theories of creation of universe and doctrine of karma are discussed therein. Puranas. These are the Hindu religious text and part of the Vedas. Puranas literally means ancient or old. They deal with a wide range of topics like myths, legends, traditional lore, history of universe from creation to destruction, demigods, sages, cosmology, philosophy, etc. They are usually written in the form of dialogue. Sage Vyasa, the narrator of the Mahabharata, is considered to be the compiler of the Puranas. Surprisingly, Puranas too had been transmitted orally before being written down. Puranas are mainly four in number: Mahapurana, Upapurana, Sthala Purana, and Skanda Purana. Epics. The Ramayana and the Mahabharata were compiled during the later Vedic period. It took a long time for them to be completed. The Ramayana. This epic is said to be the work of sage Valmiki. It centers around Lord Rama, the eldest son of King Dashratha, and his action as a son, a king, and a husband. Sita, his wife, is true Indian womanhood. The Ramayana stresses upon the philosophy of family values. Bharat refused to take over the throne and ruled only on Lord Rama's behalf. It also has the underlying message of victory of good over evil. Ravana, who represents or symbolizes evil, was finally defeated. The Mahabharata. The Mahabharata is said to be the work of sage Vyas. It is about the conflict between cousins, the Kauravas and the Pandavas, leading to the battle of Kurukshetra. According to the Mahabharata, Arjuna was not keen to fight against his cousins, and it was Lord Krishna who openly proclaimed that performance of duty was everyone's dharma and that one should not be concerned with the results. This discourse given by Lord Krishna to Arjun forms the basis of Bhagavad Gita. The Mahabharata stresses victory of good over evil and the importance of doing one's duty without any expectations. Early Vedic period, Brahmavarta, 1500 to 1000 BC, political life. A group of families lived in the Grama village headed by the Gramani village headman. Several tribes were called Janas. The head of each Jana was the Rajan, chieftain, who was the protector of his tribe. He fought wars and offered prayers to gods on behalf of his tribe. He was assisted by the Senani, army chief, for political issues, the Purohita, chief priest, for religious issues, and the Gramani for social issues. He ruled with the consent and approval of the people. There were four councils: Sabha, Samiti, Vidhata, and Gana, where important matters were discussed and decisions were taken. There was, as such, no system of revenue. People voluntarily offered their share to the kingdom. Social life. The basic Aryan social unit was the Kula, family based on patriarchy. The eldest male member headed the family and was called Kulapati or Grihapati. He took important decisions. Women enjoyed respect and status equal to that of men. They had the right to education and to choose their husbands. They could even attend political assemblies. Monogamy was practiced, and widows could remarry. Marriage was considered holy and thus indissoluble. Caste system. Initially, there were the cultivators, the priests, the warriors, and the dasyus in the society. But these groupings were not fixed or rigid. One could follow any profession according to one's wish. Slowly, the caste system developed. The division was created between the first three groups and the defeated Dasyus who were made to do all the manual work. The Dasyus were mainly dark skinned while the Aryans were fair. Thus, the fair Aryans, thinking themselves to be superior, kept aloof from the dark Dasyus. This division was called Varna, denoting color. Gradually, the division started to be based on occupation, and four Varnas or caste could be distinguished. Brahmins, priests. They performed religious ceremonies, yajna, and were the gurus who taught the students. Kshatriyas, warriors. The duty of these people was to protect their tribe. The kings usually belonged to this varna. Vaishyas, traders, and producers. They were people who kept themselves engaged in economic activities. Shudras, comprising mainly Dasyus, their main duty was to serve the other three classes and work for their benefit. The people belonging to the first three Varnas could change their Varna according to their occupation. Dietary habits. Both vegetables and animals were included in the diet. Rice, barley, bean, and sesame formed the staple food. Cow slaughter was prohibited, but fish, goat, bulls were slaughtered for food. Intoxicating drinks made from corn and barley called sura and soma respectively were popular. Dress and ornaments. Dresses made from cotton, wool, and deer skin were worn by people. Garments consisted of three pieces: nivi, undergarment, paridhan, and adhivasa. Gold embroidered garments were popular among men and women. Women wore earrings, necklaces, bangles, and anklets studded with precious stones. Men kept beard and mustache. Amusements: war dance, chariot racing, hunting, music, and gambling were the sources of amusement for Aryans. Women gave dance and music performances. Various musical instruments were also played. Occupations and economic life. Domestication of animals was considered important at that time. Cows were precious, and the value of other things was described in relation to cows. For example, 5 bags of grain might be equal to one cow. An Aryan's richness was assessed on the basis of the number of cows he possessed. The horse, which helped Aryans win wars, was also very important. They also domesticated other animals such as sheep, goats, and dogs. There were craftsmen such as potters, carpenters, and weavers. Metalwork, especially with iron, was also undertaken. Slowly, agriculture became very important and forests were cut. Crops were planted and villages settled around them. First, land was owned by the villagers and later was divided among families. Wheat and barley, along with fruits and vegetables, were the main crops. Religious life. The early Vedic people did not believe in idol worship. They did not build temples but worshipped in the open air. People performed yajnas, recited prayers, and chanted Vedic hymns for better health and welfare. The early Vedic Aryans believed in one supreme God and worshipped other gods as manifestations of the main god. They also revered many natural forces which gave them human qualities. Animal sacrifices were common. Gods such as Agni, Saraswati, Prithvi are some examples. Agni became very important as all religious ceremonies were held in front of Agni. Surya, the sun, Yama, the god of death, Varuna, the god of water, Usha, the goddess of dawn, Indra, the powerful god of rain, and Rudra, the god of thunder and storms, gained prominence. Later Vedic period. Aryavarta, 1000 to 600 BC. During this period, more and more Aryans started moving east, mainly along the Ganga and the Yamuna rivers, and gradually occupied almost the whole of northern India up to the Vindhyas in the south and the Himalayas in the north. They called this region Aryavarta. Political life. The king was not just a military leader but dominated every sphere of life of his subjects. As the kingdom expanded, so did his wealth and power. At the same time, the king was expected to rule for the welfare of the people. Kingship became mainly hereditary, and the Sabha and the Samitis lost their powers to keep control over the king. Though officers were there to advise the Rajan, who by then was all powerful. The king performed various sacrifices and rituals too. Ashwamedha Yajna was performed by the king to expand his empire and influence. A horse followed by an army was allowed to roam freely for a year. The Rajan, as king, took over all kingdoms through which the horse roamed unless the horse was stopped by somebody, which led to war. Eventually, the horse was sacrificed during the yajna. Vajpaya Yajna and Rasuya Yajna were two other rituals performed for the betterment of the king and his kingdom. Social life. By this time, the position of women had degraded. Their main duty was to marry and look after their husband and children. They were no longer allowed to participate in the assemblies. The eldest male member was the head of the family. Religious life. Time brought about changes in the religious life also. Now, three main gods, Brahma, the creator, Shiva, the destroyer, and Vishnu, the preserver, gained importance. Durga and Kali were worshipped as forms of Shakti. Lord Rama and Lord Krishna were considered to be the incarnations of Lord Vishnu. Methods of prayer saw great changes. Now, rituals and sacrifices became very important, and killing of animals started on a large scale. Brahmins gained prestige as great importance was given to the correct utterance or pronunciation and melody of the mantra, which only the Brahmins could do. Religion became expensive and complicated and beyond people's comprehension. For all religious activities, the Brahmins asked for dakshina. Caste system. The caste system became rigid and hereditary. Now, one could not change one's caste. The Brahmins started dominating, but both the Brahmins and Kshatriyas had more privileges than the other two castes. The life of the Shudras became more miserable. With the advent of more professions, more subcastes were created. The four ashrams. The life of an Aryan was divided into four stages or ashrams. Each stage lasted 25 years. A. Brahmacharya was a period of disciplined life and education. B. Grihastha was when man married and led a domestic life. C. Vanaprastha was when man spent time in the service of others and detached himself from worldly life and went into the forest and meditated. D. Sannyas was when man completely left the comforts of domestic life and became an ascetic, meditating to gain salvation. Economic life. The later Vedic period saw a more settled life with even towns developing all over. The increased use of iron and other metals helped make better tools, leading to better production. Now, pottery, weaving, and carpentry were common occupations. But still, agriculture was the basic means of livelihood. They grew rice, wheat, barley, along with fruits and vegetables. Domestication of animals was also important. Crafts like graveware pottery were also introduced during this time. Education system, Gurukul system. During Brahmacharya, students had to leave home and live in Gurukuls or the residence of the Gurus. Upnayanam or thread ceremony marked the beginning of student life. The Gurukuls were away from the cities, close to nature. While staying in the Gurukul, students had to help in domestic chores like looking after animals, cutting wood, and had to accept the Guru's decisions about everything. There was no difference between rich and poor students. No fee was charged, but while leaving, some students gave Guru Dakshina. There was no writing method. Lessons were oral, and students had to memorize large pieces of information. Subjects like mathematics, Vedas, astronomy, and even military science were taught. The whole course took as much as about 18 years.